This week, what is the best way to catch fish hidden under grass? Tim Horton will examine what to throw on top of or below grassy milfoil in depth. Then, is expecting too much from your fishing trip going to ruin it? Rick Klein shows us how to turn bad days into good days and art of angling. But up first, Kevin Van Dam shows us some cool crankbait tips in fishing in force.
Gosh, there's so much grass floating down through here, and I just ripped it off that grass, and he came up and just smoked it. That's almost always when they bite it. You know, when I'm throwing baits like this red-eye shad, they never bite it on a straight retrieve hardly. If they do, that's kind of a bonus. Usually they're gonna bite it when you stop and let the bait flutter, and flutters down, and that's the beauty of this bait right here over all other lipless crankbaits, is the way that it falls. That's why I like it so much. What a good one right there. Solid 3-pounder. It's not just a shallow water bait. I love to fish it. You know, anytime I've got 2 to 6 foot flats and grass, rocks, scattered, you know, cover like that, it's a phenomenal bait. But don't just limit it just to shallow water. I like to fish them in deep water too. One of the ways I really like to fish this bait is just cast it out there, let it sink to the bottom with tension on the line. Always let it sink with tension. That'll make that bait swim right to the bottom. And you know, no matter how deep it is, if it's 8 foot or if it's 12 foot, just let it go all the way down. Lighter size line in deeper water, and then just slowly pull it forward and then just follow it back down, just kind of yo-yoing it up and off the bottom. And every now and then I'll just kind of hop it real hard, give it a little bit of a jerk to try to get a reaction strike out of those fish. That way you're keeping tension on the line the whole time, you're keeping contact with the bait, you can tell what's going on. They're gonna bite it on the fall. Anytime you let it fall back down, just be ready for a little tick or a little subtle, oop, there I just had one. Sometimes they'll jar it like that right there, and other times they'll just, oh, that's a giant too. That's a 5-pounder. This is a little bit deeper water. It's about 12 foot deep right here, and most people wouldn't throw a bait like this on a spot like that, but anytime that I've got bass located, you know, I'll catch them with a crankbait or Carolina rig or something like that. I want to throw this bait out there. There's something about this red-eyed shad that they can't handle it. I mean, he's got it swallowed too. There is a good one. 5-pounder right there. That's what you get right there. I mean, when you hop that bait up off the bottom, be ready, because you never know what's gonna bite it. There he goes. There he is, right there on the paws. Good one too. Good one right there. I was just yo-yoing that red-eyed shad. And that's where a lot of people go wrong, is they think that these are just shallow water baits. If I want to get that bait down a little bit deeper, that's all I do is just let it sink to the bottom. And this way this bait sinks, it's going to flutter right on down. And then I'll just pull and stop, pull and stop. You just follow it back down with a little bit of tension, and you can get it down a little bit deeper. I like to fish deep grass that way. Deep structure. I mean, you hop it up, drop it back down, and oh man, he really wanted it. Quality fish right there. That's what I love about these baits, is they're so versatile. With that flat side and the way that they wiggle, boy, there's just not many places that I can't throw this bait. Anytime I find a spot that I catch fish with a crankbait or a spinner bait or something like that, that they're on a spot, I'm always going to fish this bait through there. There's something about these vibrating baits like this with the rattles and those flat sides that it just triggers reaction strikes.
How do you find the fish when they're buried under 3 feet of matted vegetation? What do you look for? Where do you find it? Tim Horton has all the answers as we go in depth.
grass. I love it. You know, the most common question I get asked anytime we're fishing anywhere throughout the country is people ask, how do you break down a lake? The first thing I'm going to look for is cover. What is available that those bass are going to get under? Largemouth bass is a creature that really likes the comfort of cover. The lake we fish today has a lot of vegetation. It has all kinds, hydrilla, milfoil, coontail, all different kinds of grass. That's the first thing I went and checked out. Now, the second thing I had to do was figure out how they're using it. You know, what depth are they in the water column? Are they in the thick stuff? Are they in the sparse stuff? So I really tried to mix it up, moved it around, and tried to figure out exactly where they were in that vegetation. You know, the first thing we did, we got out here and we started flipping the heavy vegetation. That's one of my absolute favorite things to do. Really get that braided line, the heavy tungsten weight, and go flip that matted vegetation. We did catch some fish, and they were quality fish. They're on there, fish. But when they get you wrapped up, you don't know how big they are. This could be a 1.5 pound, or it could be a 3 pounder, I don't know. If he's even still on there, it's almost like opening a Christmas present. Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Nice bass. Look at that. Down in that grass. It goes to show you just never know how big they are. That's why it's so important to use that braided line. Just a gorgeous 3.5. Nice tournament fish. Right back in the grass. When you're fishing these real heavy weights like this, 1.5 ounce tungsten weight, and you feel a strike like that, don't let your rod down, because when you do that, the bass is going to feel that heavy weight inside its mouth. Just keep the resistance and just come on back with it, just like I did with that fish, and you'll hook them almost every time. What I like to do is just take my bait and pitch it over into the cover. Let that bait go down and work that braided line up and down. Braided line is very important when fishing this matted hydrilla. You want something with a lot of strength to be able to get that fish out of there. What I'm using today is 65-pound Bass Pro Shops Magic Braid. It is great, great line when fishing that matted vegetation. Good enough, he's still on there. Again, just wrapped up in the grass. I don't even know if he's still on there or not. Well, that was a really good bite, though. Let's just have to put him in by hand. Oh, man, what's so bad is there's toothy critters in here. Oh, yeah, look at there. Look at there. All up in that grass. Another nice fish. I love it. I absolutely love fishing that matted grass. And this is probably about a 16.5, maybe 17-inch fish. Good tournament fish when you're in the tournament. I'm gonna go right back in the grass. Oh yeah. When I'm fishing the edge of the grass, what I want to look for is the drops. What happens is grass will only grow out to a certain depth, and that depends on water clarity on the lake you're fishing. The clearer the water, the deeper the grass is going to grow out. On the lake that we're fishing today, the grass goes out to about 8 or 9 foot. So I want to find those flats that drop off from, say, 7, 8 foot down to about 15 or 20. What that's going to give me is an edge, and that's where those bass really set and ambush the bait fish, is right on that edge. To show you basically just what we're using here on this flipping situation. This weight is the most important aspect of this. It's a 1.5 ounce XPS Bass Pro Shops weight. And what I've got it rigged with is a green pumpkin yum craw-pappy, and that really just gives a lot of action of that bait falling through the water. The line, this is 65-pound Bass Pro Shops cover. Don't go with monofilament in flipping matted cover. Use a good heavy action 7.5 foot flipping stick. I like a high speed reel. This is a Pflueger 6-3-1 high speed reel.
Fishing matted vegetation is probably one of the most frustrating things you could do, but also you got to keep in mind it can be very rewarding. You know, a lot of tournaments are won fishing vegetation, but you don't understand. A lot of these places, you're fishing miles and miles and miles of grass, but all you've got to do is catch one. Once you get that bite, you've located a school of fish, because they will bury up in it as a school together, and then they're easy picking.
after that, we went and looked and got out in the little bit more sparse stuff. I started seeing some fish breaking, so we moved out with the Texas rig worm. When we did that, we started getting bites, but they weren't the size of those fish that was in that heavy cover. Caught lots of numbers, but they were a little bit smaller fish. So what I started thinking then was, you know, these fish they're using that vegetation, but the bigger fish are in that heavier cover. There's only a few baits that you can use to really get back and fish that cover. You can't fish it with a spinner bait or a crankbait or anything like that because it's just going to get marred up. That's when I decided to go with the frog, and that's when we found those bigger fish. This is not for the faint of heart. Oh, you just want to not set the hook too quick. Oh, they just keep missing it. How are they not getting it? This is killing me. That's one thing about fishing these frogs. You're going to get some heartbreaks. They're coming up through so much vegetation that they'll miss it a lot of times. That's one part of it, but it's still pretty exciting. You know, a lot of people would ask, what made me decide to fish the frog or the 1.5 ounce tungsten weight? And it wasn't the time of day. You know, we actually had those bigger topwater bites right in the middle of the day. What would be the key on that was the thickness of the vegetation. If it was a real thin mat, I opted for the frog. I could cover more water, and those fish were sitting up real high under the mat, and they could feel that coming over. But if the mat was really thick, you know, 8 to 12 inches, then I opted for that 1.5 ounce tungsten weight because I could really penetrate that heavy cover and bring that bait all the way up to it, touch the bottom of the mat, and that's when those bass would strike. Come on, Frogger. Oh, there's a good one. There's a good one out of that mat. Stay on it. Oh, look at that fish. Look at that big old bass. That's what I'm talking about right there. Stay hooked up. Stay hooked up. Oh, I love it. Look at that. He choked that frog. What a beautiful fish. Oh, we fish and miss, and you miss, and you miss, and you miss, and then bam, one takes it. Gorgeous. What a fish. Looking at the tackle setup for fishing this frog, I like a 7-foot medium heavy action all-star rod with a 6-3-1 Fluger reel. Again, the braided line is very important, using the same thing as I was flipping the 65-pound test Magic braid. The frog I'm using, I like various colors, blacks, browns, anything of that nature works really well. Sometimes I like to take the skirt out of the frog and weight it. If the mat's a little bit thicker and I don't feel like they're actually feeling the frog come across the surface, I'll go with that heavier frog with the weight in the back end, and that allows it to sit down and move more water as the bait's moving. You know, when you're fishing that frog, you want to try to use as much patience as you can. You know, the first thing you see, you're twitching that thing along and then just massive explosion. The first reaction is just to lay back as quick as you can. But that's the biggest mistake you can make. You want to wait until you feel that strike. But if you do miss a strike and you can't get him to come back and bite on it, hurry up and reel back in and throw right back to that same spot. Look and see where the hole he made was. You want to come back over that exact hole, and a lot of times you can get him to bite again. Oh, there's a big one. Oh yeah. That is a toad, and he is still on there. Look at him pulling that rod. Oh, stay hooked. You know, you just have to take your time. You can't. That is a big one, fellas. You just have to let them get lodged up in that grass and take your time. Oh, this is a giant. Look how far up back in this mat this fish is. Oh my goodness. Look at this. Look at that fish. That is a frog toad. Absolutely smoked it. I mean, look at this. That is awesome. When you're fishing these big, huge grass mats like this, don't be afraid to pull right up in the middle of them. Most anglers come and they just stay right along the outside. Those are the fish that get a lot of pressure. Take either your big motor or your trolling motor and just moor right up in the middle of this stuff and make a lot of fan casts around. You're going to fish for fish that are not getting fished for.
One of the things that I always do when I'm fishing slow-moving baits, like flipping, pitching, Carolina rigging, casting a worm, is I'm going to put some scent on it. Mustad Activate comes in both a spray and a paste, and it does two things. If the bite's tough, the fish are going to bite the bait better, hold it, take it deeper, and you're going to catch more of them. If you're fishing in thick cover too, it's going to slide through the cover a lot better. It kind of lubricates the bait. Not only does it go down, but when you go to reel it back out of the grass or the brush, it's going to come out a lot better. Anytime I'm fishing slow-moving baits, I'm going to have scent added to it.
Up next, Rick Clunt offers his unique insights on how to turn a bad day fishing into a good day on the water. It's this week's Art of Angling.
You know, what one thing ruins more fishing trips than anything else? Bad weather, losing your favorite lure, or ultimately not catching any fish. You know, what I've kind of discovered over my many years of fishing is the thing that ruins more fishing trips than anything else is often unrealistic or unfair expectations about what's going to happen when you get there. You know, so many things can determine whether a fishing trip turns out to be what you expect or not. You know, but more often than not, the number one thing I think that can really make a fishing trip disappointing is having unfair expectations to begin with. Even back when I was a kid and my dad would be explaining and we read about the Sam Rayburn Reservoir in East Texas, they're catching 100 bass a day, and you get these thoughts in your mind. You start seeing yourself up there, and you know, you see the lake and there's bushes everywhere, and you think, well, there's a fish under every bush, and every cast you're going to catch one. And unfortunately, that's not what happened. I think we fished for 2 days and caught 2 fish, and really did not enjoy the trip. And so your whole trip is planned around what I call unfair expectations. And that's really where these expectations kind of probably do fishermen and fishing an injustice. Is that because everything is based on catching a lot of fish, then most of our trips, I hate to tell you this, we're going to be disappointed. So what I really try to do myself, and this is where I use my tournament fishing a little bit to my advantage, I've learned over the years, the morning before the tournament, is I set a minimum goal, a minimum expectation for that day. And we call it in tournament fishing a 5-fish mentality. Okay, if I can go out there and I can get 1 bite an hour, 1 bite every 2 hours, if I get 5 bites all day, then that's going to be a good day. And anything more than that then becomes just a bonus. But at least then I don't get impatient with myself. I don't start to panic if 3 hours have gone by and you haven't caught a fish. You know, I can go for 2 hours without catching a fish, but boom, I catch 1 or 2 right there in the 3rd hour, I'm back on track again. That may not sound a lot to a lot of people, but many days, some of my best days have been like that. I mean, they're challenging, and yet they're rewarding at the same time because you had to work hard. And this does several things. Again, it allows you to fish better, you fish calmer, but even more important than that, it allows you to start enjoy your casting. And there's so much more you can enjoy about your fishing trip if you don't ruin it to start off with the wrong expectations.